Trusting the gear, hoping this works. Because this is one take. Hey, Sean. With my channel, I tend to stay away from anything too personal. I am completely transparent about my creative process and my business, but my family and my personal life, I keep generally off camera. And the subject of grief is on my mind as I have recently experienced a loss. And this comes after having several people close to me experience loss, but I had not. And I was in that position where I'm talking to people and trying to comfort them and listen and be that sounding board and say the things that you say to somebody who's grieving, and try to be helpful where you can and leave this space for them to experience it. And then when faced with it myself, once again, it's funny how quickly all the tools just disappear. And on grief, I'll say this. I'm surprised at how much time and how much of my process has been spent wondering what other people will think. And by that I mean with with a YouTube video. Do I make a YouTube video about this? Is that disingenuous? Does that dishonor the relationship, the individual? Does that change what it meant to me by not making a video? Is that a slight to what it meant to me? And I go back and forth on this, and what is the right thing? And as I'm feeling the roller coaster of emotions that one experiences with grief, I'm left with I'm trying to be vulnerable. I'm trying to be transparent, and I am with those that I'm close to. But then there's this thing of when you see someone who's just an acquaintance, and I experienced the other day walking past a few people that I know, but we don't gab. And they said, "How are you?" And it was that situation of I don't know what to say. Do I say, "Good, fine, how are you?" just to get the interaction over with? Because they're not. This isn't an attack on anyone, but that's what you say in a situation like that. They're not asking me to unload my emotions on them. And if I say something like, "Oh, I'm not doing too good," am I saying that so that they ask me more? So that they prompt me to share my story and what I'm going through? And that's what I'm struggling with. And I've spent so much time wondering what someone else is going to think. And am I too functional? Am I not functional enough given their assumption of what my grief process should be? And I've seen people close to me go through this recently, and never was a moment of my time spent, or anyone else that I know spent, judging them or their process or the time it takes, or whether they're in a good mood soon thereafter, or it seems surreal, or if they're in the throes of the sadness. There's no judgment on any of that. And I don't know why I couldn't/can't get past that expectation that I'm curious about. And curious if the comments in this video would be rude or be understanding, or if I'll turn them off completely. And it's just a weird thing, but I find it clouding my own experience and getting in the way. And as I've had this up and down crazy winter so far, and a November that on a creative, a business, and a personal in several facets, just roller coaster of some super, super highs and some super, super lows, I'm left excited for what's to come, but I have this urge to create, and I've been quiet on my channel, and not that my channel is anyone who cares, who's eagerly awaiting what I say. But this is a part of my process. This is a part of my creativity. And making these videos and whatever advice I may share in them is advice I'm trying to give myself more than I'm trying to share with anyone else in most cases. And this was another situation, again, where this was advice that I've given to people before, and yet again, I'm not heeding it myself. And how quickly all my tools and all my composure and all my preparation and thoughtfulness, how quickly that all disappears in the face of adversity, in the face of pressure testing those things. And I've talked before about this and how, yeah, when your tools disappear and you find your way back to them, you get better at that every time. But it still doesn't change the feeling when the tools disappear and you're just left feeling incompetent and incapacitated. And so through this, I am not going to share my story. My story is for me and the people close to me with whom I want to share. And I'm not putting it on my channel. And I feel good about that. That's the right decision for me. But I want to share a few things that were shared with me by people I won't name. Some of these people who went through loss recently and were kind enough to share parts of their story with me, and we got to discuss a little bit. But there was something that was absolutely beautifully said by a friend of mine. There are a few things, nuggets that came from these different conversations. But the first is that while grief is intense and it is by far the worst emotion, none of this stuff is a comfort. But to know that you only experience grief, the worst emotion, you only experience true grief when you've experienced the best emotion of love. And without that true love, you don't experience the true grief. And the worse your grief is, it only means that's how strong the love was. That's how deep and important and impactful the love was, where when it's gone, it leaves a giant hole, and grief seeps into that hole, and that's the only thing that seems to fill it. And I'm not knowing that, hearing that, telling myself that, telling anyone else that doesn't help. That doesn't, in the moment, it's not like, oh yeah, you're right. It doesn't work that way. But the strange thing that gets put on grief, and this is what I find myself talking about when I have shared this with people, and this is what my friend shared with me, is she said something to the effect of like, why are people saying I'm being strong or I'm being weak? And that is such a common expression of support when somebody loses someone, and they're in the grieving process, the unending grieving process. We ask, or we say, you know, they're doing great. They're so strong through. It's incredible how strong you are. And I think that's all we ever say. And what she posed is like, what am I doing that's strong? Like, if I can't feed and dress myself, how is that strength? And what does weakness look like? But why do we put our handling of grief on this spectrum? On this spectrum of judgment of words like strength and weakness? Why do we do that? And why do we hold ourselves to some stoic ideal? And as much as I love stoicism, I'm talking about sort of the cliche use of it, of trying to act like you're not affected by it. And that's where I think my doubt, my insecurity sits. And like, do I want to say something? Do I not want to say something? Because I don't want someone to think I'm overreacting, and I don't want someone to think I'm underreacting. And it's very difficult for me to not imagine someone judging my process. And for that reason, I stay tighter-lipped about it, especially on my channel. But no, I share this, and I share my vulnerability, and I share this with the people that I'm close to. And I hope that if you're dealing with something like this, you do the same, and don't waste a moment on a feeling about your feelings. Because if I had to make a pie chart of my emotions lately, there'd be a much bigger piece dedicated to worrying about, are these the right emotions, and what will other people think about these emotions? There's a larger chunk of my pie chart dedicated to that than there should be. And it's unavoidable for a lot of people like myself, and that's okay too. And I realize that beating myself up for beating myself up is just an unending cycle and a downward spiral. But as I go through this, and as anyone else goes through this, and especially with the holidays around the corner, and well, not around the corner, they're here. And as we've celebrated our holidays over the past couple weeks, and with more to come, there's habits and routines that anyone grieving is going to notice being different. And I say this not, I think I've talked about this stuff in the past. I made the video a couple years ago about how you should remember that people are hurting and maybe keep that in mind as you interact with other people. But I think my message right now is flipping it to, you may be experiencing something, and I hope that you give yourself a little space to experience it, and don't judge yourself for any of your feelings or wherever you may be on the roller coaster of emotions that comes along with grief. Don't judge yourself. And if you can, really try not to worry about what someone else may think about your process, and any action that you may take at any moment at any particular point on the ups and downs of this. Nonviolent. Any nonviolent actions. Because it just makes it so much worse. It's like, for those of us with anxiety, it's like when people, half of our anxiety is worrying about what other people are going to think about our anxiety. And once we admit that we have anxiety, so many people have a better experience with it. And grief and loneliness, these are all the same, where if we can just give ourselves the space to truly experience these emotions, we can heal and we can savor these emotions differently than if we waste time being self-conscious about our own reaction to our emotions, especially in the most intensive emotions, in the negative of grief. That's all I got. Love yourself, love other people. Don't do anything that's going to make anybody's holidays any more challenging than they may already be. Have a great day or night or whatever, wherever. See you later. Bye.